everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you are new, thanks for checking us out, and consider hitting that subscribe button below and that post notification bell so you are notified whenever we post new fun stuff. If you're coming back for more, thank you very much for the support. Today, we are working on the 72 Challenger, or at least part of it. We've got the front passenger fender up here behind me with a hole in the back of it. And here's what's going on. Granted, it's upside down, but this is the driver side fender. Yeah, driver's side fender. Big hole was cut out of it because there was some bad metal in here. It was just thin sheet metal like you get from your home store, not the right stuff. It was all dented and beat up anyway, so we found a replacement panel, I think off of year one. And that, in theory, when it's all said and done, goes on here. Now, this is going to need quite a bit of fitment before it goes on. It's not a direct replacement. You'll see I've got some cutting to do and whatnot to make it fit on there how it should. Now, the big question in my mind is, do I simply chop off here and put this entire panel back on? Or do I notch out just the bad stuff here and put it back together? That is kind of my question, and yeah. Now my big question here is, do I just take and cut off everything that this panel consumes and weld it back on and call it good? Because I do know there are a few little spacing issues and fitment. You can see the wheel, the flare is a little bit less on the replacement part, so I don't want to simply just start hacking away and be left with the ugly, unsightly gap here. You can see it's about 3/16 of an inch between the new panel patch and the existing original panel. So I'm tempted to patch in what I've cut out, or at least extend things a little bit more and leave this piece here, leave this part of the flare intact as much as possible, because we know this was the original factory size, curve, contour, everything, and we know this one is not an exact perfect fit. Now, I did have some other parts in the shop that came with the car, some other metal, but that was also pretty rusted and dented up, and trying to contour that in here, I knew it was going to be a giant pain in the butt. So we simply got a new patch panel and we call it good. We also have this new support, but this is just fine. I see no reason to cut this off and the structure off, but I think what I'll have to do is end up cutting down more of this piece here, taking off where it's crimped around the support member here, and getting ready to weld back on. So if I can figure out what I want to say and actually get it out of my face, we'll be good. That's going to be half the battle. The other half is figuring out what I'm going to do with this panel. So let me go ahead, figure things out, and I'm going to come back with more of a game plan. Alrighty, so I think my plan of attack is this. I'm going to cut, see a little thin Sharpie line, cut along here, which if you actually look at the panel itself is pretty much straight across. I'm going to cut across here, and then before we get the contour, I'm going to cut up here. I'm going to do a little bit of an angle so we keep some of our structure in there versus just a flat line so it's all floppy and flimsy. Look at how well the golf cart's framed back there. That'll be another project for restoration sometime this winter. Anyways, back to the topic. Cut along here, this contour, and remove this wraparound piece from the back here. And that should hopefully then give us a good starting point for getting our patch panel put back in place. So let's go ahead and do that and see if we can wake up the sleeping children. Alrighty, well, we got a cutaway. Notice I've got gloves on again after seeing my last, one of my last posts over on Instagram. I sort of ran into my knuckle with the grinder. Yeah, my bad. Anyways, we got this cut out and I think we're really close. You'll notice I didn't cut right down to the line yet. Wanted to make sure our measurements were as close so we can get them. And I'm gonna have to grab some clamps and fit things on here because this is a little bit off, but we're really close to where we should be. So I'm gonna find some little clamps, try and get this tightened up where it should be, and then we can make a little better marks. The big thing is getting these lined up, because here, you're looking at the bottom of the panel actually, and that's where it bolts onto the car itself. And this is just sort of a little trim fascia over it. So you notice over here where the old piece was. So a little bit of trim there. But really I think it's a pretty good spot to almost be where we need it to be. Almost. Alrighty, well we've got 3 of the 4 sides kind of clamped in place. Let me show you here. So this is the side here that is not fitting up well at all. If I try and push this on, it just throws everything else out of whack. My main concern is this edge here. This is the edge that's going to line up with the front door. And this is going to be my gap I'm going to be most worried about. So I want to make sure out of any of the edges, this is the one that fits right. And a little dark back here, I'll find some better light, but here we go. DeWalt, there we go. You can see this lines up really well with the support column here. And I don't have any gaps between here and here, so that's what I'm looking for. But if I go ahead and try and pull this in the wheel well to where it should be, it goes and throws this top edge off here with about 1/8 of an inch gap between this column, the support, and the patch panel. And I don't want that because that's going to throw off my gap for the doors. So I think what I need to do, and what I thought originally, you can also see that throws off my line by about 3/16 of an inch. So I think I need to keep this loose and start with this being my reference point for everything being trued up with the panel is going off this line for the door gap. So of course all the doors are off the car, so I really can't check that. But I think that is going to be my plan. I can get it set up here and it's sort of tacked in and just sort of gauge this, I guess, and see what it looks like with the clamps off of it. But I think this is going to match up quite well if I set the edge of this panel against this support brace here. So that is the plan. Go ahead and reset things. We'll take some final measurements to make sure this line is spot on, and then we're going to take another cut out of this panel, and then we're going to take a cut out of the patch along here and see where we're at. Now, we need to be mindful back here that I only need to cut out this little area because this part here needs to be intact and this gets welded onto here. So there actually wasn't a lot of welding here. It was more just support, and you can also see with everything out of whack there's a big gap here, so that'll get closed up once everything is said and done. But I just want to make sure that, and this you can, oh, here we go. That's what I'm looking for too. Let me show you this. Get the dust off. There is a very small style line right here, and that matches up with here. So I need to make sure that these are matching up. And right now that's here, and this comes to right here. So let me mark that out. So this first mark feels like it's right about here. And I'll go back and take some better measurements when I have both hands free. But the other one seems like it's back here a ways. Like almost back here. So I may do a little more checking to make sure that we have an actual 72 Fender on here, and there wasn't a difference between 70 or 71 or 72 or 73 or whatever it may be, because I shouldn't have 3/4 inch of gap, because that makes nothing line up. It's just very minor. You can barely kind of see it in the light here. Right there, a little line coming down and out right there. Trying to get you in the right light so you can see that. There it is. And here was the other line from the car. So I'm going to check on that before I make any cuts to this, of course. But I know, regardless, this piece is what it is. And I just want to make sure that whatever we're doing here is going to match up, because right now they don't match perfectly. And in order to get them to match up, this has to come 3/4 inch this way. So I'm going to figure out why that is, and come back once I get that figured out. Alrighty, we're back. It's been about a week, and I went ahead and got my replacement patch panel here from AMD. I came in here this afternoon. Okay, shout out to AMD. Not sponsored, but they get products here quick. So what we see here is our replacement fender patch, and I held the two of them up side by side, and where this style line is here on this panel is just, you can see it right very well here in the shadow, perfect. It was just off a little bit. If you look in the previous clips, it was definitely off. So, something in fabrication, stamping, production, whatever, caused it to be off, and that wasn't good. Now if we look here, we are darn near spot on, and when this gets fit down and tucked in where it should be, that's going to be right where it needs to be. So that leads me to the other little imperfection on both of these patches, is this here is still a little narrow compared to this. If we look here, we're maybe 1/2 to 9/16, and here we're probably 3/8, a little more maybe, but either way, not quite perfect here, and the same thing continues almost all the way down here. It's a little narrow. So I think what I'm going to have to do is cut this panel along here so we retain this original size here of this inner little fender lip here, just because I don't want to have to cut over that 1/8 of an inch difference and trying to explain why that's not right. So we aren't putting the little chrome strips back on here, so that is kind of important that this does remain flush all the way down as it came from the factory. So I think my next step here, I've got this Clecoed on temporarily, thanks to Dad for loaning me a giant box of Clecos and little clippy things. If you're not familiar with those, they're these little guys here. You've got commonly used for body panels on cars, aviation, whatnot. And he happened to have these laying around from the airplane project years ago. So these help hold panels on when you're trying to get them test fit and spotted in place. Random door hinge. Anyways, so we got those. Got the panel held on here in place without using giant ugly clamps. You can also see here, once we get this on and fit on, we'll have our cover here for fitting up to the bottom of the car. They did include another brace here. Let's see here. Like I said, literally fresh out of the box. Let's turn off my furnace. I said we're literally fresh out of the box. And I'm going to set this up here, but I don't know that I need to replace it. I mean, these holes here are fine. They're not rusted. They're not bent out of shape. Everything here looks good. And I think if I cut this off and replace it again, we're going to be losing some of our structural integrity right here, because this is where we cut the panel off and this is where we cut that support off. And this support here is in good enough shape where I think it's best to maintain the structure here and put that back on. So I'm going to take some measurements and figure out where we're going to need to keep cutting both the fender back a little bit more and on this new patch panel. Oh, I was really close, sorry. To trim out back here on the new panel so that we can fit everything in here nicely. Now this little tight corner here is going to be a challenge, so I'll probably cut my patch panel a little short and fill that gap in versus worrying about this being tight and rubbing and falling out of place and I'm trying to weld it in. So we're going to get to that and start hacking away. Alrighty guys, we are back. It has been far too long to get back here working on this Challenger, the front fender, but just everything else creeps up in the way, like life, family, kids, work, other cars. Anyways, I've got probably 3 to 4 hours off the clock here trying to get this fender patch fit in here where I think it should go. And now I've got it all kind of stuck in place with these butt weld clamps, a couple of C-clamps, and this gap down here kind of is horrible. I don't like it, but it is what it is. And what I figured out I think I need to do is just take a couple of spot welds, tack it in place in a few places, and then go hang it on the car and get the door on there, because we do have this tab to bend over and then spot in. But I do want to make sure that with a few tacks, this, excuse me, what I do want to make sure is that this line and contour is still going to be in line with the door so that fits up properly. Now, just looking here, roughly it looks like it's going to fit up and match very closely. And you know what? These gaps from the 70s, they weren't as clean as they are today. I mean, manufacturing processes were not as good as they were back then. The quality of the cars may have been a little better, but the manufacturing process and fit and finish of all the panels, I don't think was quite as clean. So we're going to take that with a grain of salt and try and do the best job we can getting this mated up on the car with the door. So for now, I just want to go ahead and get this tacked in, and then we'll have to go dig the Challenger out of the shop and bring that up. So let's get our good old Vulcan 220 set up and ready to go. Alrighty, well, as you can see, I've got a few tacks in here. So we're going to go ahead and take off all my little clamps. And I guess we'll have to wait to come back until we get the Challenger up here, because we've got another project currently occupying space behind me. Yeah, again, need the shop to get finished. So we're going to let this sit for now. I know for me it's going to be a couple of weeks before the Challenger gets up here for the majority of the metal work, which is going to hopefully be the filler panel in the trunk, maybe the inner fender if I can get the get it out and tacked back in without pulling the engine. We've got the roof swap to do. We have the rear package tray to do. There's a patch for the door I have to do, but I can do that really anytime. And I'm still waiting on the rear quarter panel patch for the passenger side that's been on order since May. And it is, for me, almost the beginning of December. For you, maybe January. And I probably won't have it by the time you see this video. So just waiting on parts because things are what they are. So we'll go ahead, shelf this for right now and come back when I've got the opportunity to get it on the car and make sure it's right before I go ahead and burn everything in, because I really don't want to do this again. And while at the end of the day it would have been a whole lot cheaper to go ahead and buy a pair of new or new old stock, reproduction, whatever, front fenders, I guess my labor price is too cheap. And I'm using Darren's current fenders and getting them back as clean as I can. So end of the day, if they end up looking like complete garbage, because these things were riddled with dents and looks like someone hit it with a 12 gauge and then a rolling pin and then rolled over with a semi-truck. If they look like garbage, we'll go for plan B. But for right now, we are going to try and use these just because they are original to the car, or at least original to the period. I know one of these is from a different vehicle, a different year. So at least in the ballpark. Yeah, so we'll go ahead. We'll come back. I'll stop rambling on. So see you as soon as the scene changes. We are finally taking a look at the door fitment and the patch panel fitment on the Challenger. It's been way too long since I've done this, but in my defense, it's been cold in the shop down here. The door was buried and I just didn't want to go out in the cold. But gotta get the video done. I've got to move forward. And here's where we're sitting. Got our nice light here in our jump pack from Top Don. Just recently reviewed that. But the important part is yeah, I know we're 3/4 inch down. Everything's out of alignment because the door is simply hanging in the jamb right now. But what I wanted to look at is these lines here. So don't take into account that these are all in the wrong place now and spaced, but I'm looking at the gap the way down here, and where it sits, I've got just about a finger width this entire way, right at my first knuckle, the entire way down, and I don't get any pinch in my finger. So what that tells to me is that this patch in here is in a really good spot. And even fitting these bolt holes down underneath, those are of course the original mounting holes, but they are in place and where they should be. And just look at this beautiful fender I've worked on patching with so many hours. Anyways, yeah, I think that's sitting in a pretty good spot. So I'm happy with where we've got that patch tacked in. So now our next step is to escape up to the garage where it is considerably warmer and get that welded in. Alrighty, well that's gonna wrap up this chapter finally after far too many weeks just because I don't like the cold. Anyways, we'll go ahead and get this, this fender patched up, ready to go, skimmed, trimmed, and ready to go for paint. But I'll leave that off for right now because, well, you've seen me weld enough. And if you want more, well, don't worry, there's plenty more where this came from. Anyways, thanks for watching this. Like, share, subscribe, hit those buttons, do your thing, and we will see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.